Welcome to the G5 Hive and the next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be heading over to the American Athletic Conference and taking a look at the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes, who finished 3-9 last season. They wrapped up their 2025 spring practice with a showcase on April 26th. We have a special guest joining us today. He is a former radio host. He is a sideline reporter for Tulsa football via Learfield Sports. He is a sports producer and digital sports liaison for News on 6. He is Jeremie Poplin. Jeremie can be found on X at Jeremie Poplin. Welcome to the show, Jeremie.
Justice, I appreciate it, man. Hope that you're doing well, and really cool. I love the fact that we have outlets like yours that highlight the G5 programs. That is something that, especially in today's day and age, that gets kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit to me, and it's really cool to see the work and effort that you guys do to make sure that you're trying to highlight each and every single last one of them.
Absolutely, it's a lot of work, but I often refer to it as a labor of love. The teams in the G5 and the players in the G5, they don't get the recognition that they deserve, and we're just doing our part to try to do what we can to get them some recognition and some love. So definitely appreciate that. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been covering Tulsa football?
Oh man, you touched a little bit there on the former side of my radio career, which began in 2001 and came to an end June of 2024. So I have been in television now for the last year, all in the Tulsa market for a couple of different stations. Was program director since 2015 for two different stations here in town. Have born and raised here in Oklahoma, and have lived here in the Tulsa area my entire life. So my kind of my heritage and my DNA runs deep, not only with the state schools that are here, but Tulsa has always kind of held a little special place in my heart. That was, I think, the very first collegiate football game that my dad took me to, Tulsa versus UNLV game, way back in the day. And through the course of my radio career, I met some really cool people that were affiliated with the program, Hall of Famers for the university. Jerry Ostrowski, who was an All-American there, played for the Buffalo Bills, is one of my best friends. He's like a brother to me. We did a radio show together, and that really kind of kicked off at least more of my understanding and appreciation for the university and for the athletic department. Had relationships with Bubba Cunningham, who's the AD at UNC now, when he was at Tulsa, through the various coaches, whether that was Steve Crackthorpe, and being able to go and even go to road games with them, with what Todd Graham accomplished, and to see the different phases of Tulsa football really kind of come into its heyday there in the early 2000s. To when I got an opportunity in 2014, I think, is when Bill Blankenship, who was the head coach, and I've known Bill for years because he was a head coach at a high school here before Todd hired him as a coach on the staff. They had an opportunity arise on the radio network for a sideline reporter, and after they huddled for a bit, Bill Blankenship is the one that kind of got the ball rolling, and they brought the idea to me. And 2014 was my first year. Unfortunately for Bill, that was only 1 year that I got to work with Bill as a sideline reporter before he got let go. And then that led to Philip Montgomery coming in and kind of setting the program on fire there for a few years, to ultimately Kevin Wilson last year, and now year one of the Trey Lamb era. So this will be year 11 for me, and season 12, I think, on the sidelines with the Golden Hurricane.
Well, I did get to watch one game in the Philip Montgomery era, I guess, like in person. We were talking earlier. I'm an Old Dominion fan, alumni, etc.
Yeah.
Like I got to see that bowl game, and that was they put it on us. Like I'll never forget. Like I'm pretty sure I remember my moment of joy was the opening kickoff when Lamarian James took it 100 yards to the house, and I was so hyped up. And then like from that point on, it was nothing but a steady decline.
I got to say, I didn't really have any level of expectations for what that bowl game was going to be, but I thought that Coastal Carolina did a really good job of at least hosting. It was a unique environment for that bowl game to be played in. And after that happened, that moment that happened, I think during the break in the radio network, we had a few comments back and forth like, oh boy, like here we go. Is it just going to be one of those days? We've all been a part of those where like nothing goes correct at all in the course of a game. And ended up working out in Tulsa's favor for sure. But yeah, I Old Dominion had tremendous fans and tremendous support that came down and supported them for that game. It was a really cool game.
Yeah, it was a fun time. Well, let's move over to some Tulsa football, and let's start with the man in charge. As you mentioned, the Golden Hurricanes have hired Trey Lamb as their new head coach. He comes to Tulsa via East Tennessee State. He was their head coach in 2024. Prior to that, from 2020 to 2023, he was the head coach at Gardner-Webb. What can you tell us about Coach Lamb and what he brings to the table for the Golden Hurricanes?
Well, first of all, I think you said it right there, and Coach Lamb will be the first to tell you that Tulsa's a unique place. Smallest D1 enrollment in the entire country. They play in a conference that historically, from a G5 perspective, right, has had the majority, outside of Boise, has had the majority of heavyweights that have been included in New Year's Six bowl games. The Cincinnatis of the world, the UCFs, before ultimately they got the call up to Power 5 programs, and then what Tulane has built themselves into. Trey never backed down from any of that and the challenge of moving from an East Tennessee State to the University of Tulsa, because he'll tell you Gardner-Webb may be one of the toughest places to coach in the entire country. East Tennessee State's a very difficult place to coach, and what he did there was basically flip the entire script. Gardner-Webb, they were 3-9, and then back-to-back conference championships, after he leaves and help kind of establish them and build that program. East Tennessee State, 3-8 record. He goes 7-5 in his first season that's there, and now he gets this opportunity to come here. So the one thing that you need to know about Trey is I've always viewed coaches in a couple of different lights, and I view Trey as a program builder. And I think with an opportunity like at Tulsa, and let's not kid ourselves here, is Tulsa the end all be all destination for Trey Lamb? Probably not, right? I don't know. I mean, who would have guessed that Mark Few would have been at Gonzaga for as long as he's been? But Trey's a program builder, but he does it in such a quick fashion that it has kind of put him on a little bit of a rocket ship, right, to take over a program in the American Athletic Conference in a very short amount of time. There is no one, and I mean no one, that is as competitive as that dude is. And he comes by it honestly. And first time you listen to him, you're like, man, this guy, like, and you wonder, and this is what I love about him, is like you listen to him and you hear it, and there's such a belief and a confidence in his ability. And the first time you walk away, you're like, did he tiptoe up to the like confidence or cocky line? You know what I mean? Like there's it when someone like takes a step over it, or from the great Chappelle show, a habitual line stepper. Like, did he habitually line step up to the level? And there's not an ounce of it that comes away or is from the cockiness level. It's all confidence, because he has a belief in himself unlike any other head coach that his age that I've ever seen. And this energy and enthusiasm about him has permeated across this city unlike anything that I've ever seen before. And the times that I have seen it where everyone is so gung-ho and so fired up about Tulsa football, it's been after results, right? It was after what Cragthorpe did in year one, where everyone's just blown away. My gosh, they're going to the Humanitarian Bowl. This is insane. It's confidence after years of what Todd Graham accomplished and then going and winning conference championships. They've had to put their helmet and pads on and prove it to everyone. Like Trey hasn't even had the opportunity to coach a game yet, and he's got everyone so jacked and so juiced around this city this city has a ton of money, and the university has always tried to find a way to crack open that piggy bank, so to speak, from the city with the assets that it has. And you have to have a perfect combination because of the size of the school. You have to, one, not only be confident and firm belief in what you're doing, you have to be good and have the results, but you also have to be incredibly personable. And man, he has blown everyone away. He did not leave one stone, one conversation, one phone call, one text message where he wasn't back and chatting with everyone. You talk to anyone that he's had lunch with, dinner with, that has any type of influence in this city, and they all come away and say the same thing, like, yo, this guy just has the it factor. And like, listen to me, I'm going on about this guy. He hasn't even coached a game yet here, but I'm telling you, I know hard work and determination when I see it. And the last thing I think that Trey Lamb's going to let happen is to have any form of bad product continuously as he's the head coach. I think he'd honestly rather take another job before he had any level of like consistency of being down and bad. And then he's gone out and put together a heck of a staff. And as the entire staff has worked their tail off to recruit, not only on the high school front, but to kind of flip the script in the transfer portal a little bit as well with so many new faces. Like we can get into it a little bit later, but to have 35 new faces like in year one, there's a lot of unknown, right? There's a lot of unknown, but he just leaves you with this. You know, they got a rough schedule in 25. Just look at their schedule. For a G5 school, man, that's you're catching a lot of the heavyweights in conference. You play Oklahoma State. Travel's not easy. You go to Army as well. But the one thing that you will that I think that we know is that they're going to be competitive. And no, you're not going to have any of this, you know, giving up 62 to UAB, you know, like on the road type stuff that we saw last year. So they may only win 5 games. You know, they don't want that. They want to be bowl eligible, but they're going to be competitive and they're going to be in every game.
Well, as you mentioned, like, you know, and as you might expect with a new head coach, that means new assistants, new coordinators, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Tulsa's obviously no different in that regard. He's brought in Trey Lamb has brought in Brad Robbins to be his new offensive coordinator. Coach Robbins joins the staff via UConn, where he served as a quarterbacks coach and a passing game coordinator in 2024. Prior to that, he was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Southern Utah and the wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator at Tennessee Tech. They also bring in Ty Darlington as a co-offensive coordinator and tight ends coach. He was the offensive line coach for Incarnate Word in 2024. Prior to that, the tight ends coach at Incarnate Word. From what you've been able to see, hear, and learn, how would you describe the type of offensive style we should plan to see in Tulsa this season?
He's used this a few times, so I'll use it as well. And it's an example multiple times of, I think you're going to see a little bit of a version of the Tennessee Volunteers offense, if anyone is familiar with that. Now, let's not get it twisted. This is a version of the air raid, right, that he runs, that he has perfected in his own way over the last couple of years. It's hard to argue with the results that he's had. You know, look at last year. The amount of records that they set, not only for school, but within conference, was impressive. He loves to throw it around. They're going to throw the football, but it's not going to be, from what I understand. Do we have any more of a traditional air raid anymore since Mike Leach left us? I don't think so. You know, it's been crafted and manipulated in so many different ways and little bits and pieces here. So at its core, it will be a version of the air raid, but they're going to run the football. Like they're going to run the football, but this is going to be an offense that is based off of pace. They want to get after you. They want to wear you out. They want to test your physical limits of just how good that your physical conditioning is. They want to wreak havoc on the defense with quick timing and get the ball out as quickly as possible. And he said this, and I can't wait to watch it like fully develop. Every player is a weapon for them, right? This is not, they want to get the ball out as quick as possible, get it into space. They bring in these super athletic guys for a reason, because football, especially on the college front, and I think you could make a great argument for college and NFL that it should be the opposite with the hashes. College football is built around having that amount of space. And Trey's going to take advantage of that every chance that he gets. I mean, everything down from the splits down to how wide out that they're going to be. He wants to kind of press the limits on that. And I think it's going to be a ton of fun to watch. I will say this, in the amount of time that I got to spend around them in spring football practice, you never know how year one's going to be, right? With everyone being on the same page and trying to learn a new system. It seemed like things came together rather quickly. And it may, like that's just me. He may have a completely different version of that. I think he was happy with specific positions, but he also knows that year one is the most significant challenge with everyone through spring ball and especially in the fall camp. But yeah, man, they're gonna be full throttle on offense, and I can't wait to watch it evolve over the course of the season.
Well, speaking of full throttle, let's get to that position that's going to run this offense, and that's the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Last season, we saw 4 quarterbacks play in 4 more games, most of which was between Cooper Legas and Kirk Francis. Legas has graduated, while 2 other quarterbacks have transferred, leaving Kirk Francis as the clear-cut number 1. I believe Coach Lamb even said that in spring. How did Kirk look in the spring? And how would you describe his playing style for folks that aren't familiar with him?
I love Kirk, by the way. Great family. And I think of, so much of like the base of someone coming in, he needs a good, solid support system. And Kirk definitely has that. He, to me, has the demeanor that I want in a quarterback. There's a lot in Kirk of you won't hear him be like overly boisterous, right? He's not necessarily a rah guy. He's just in my opinion, like get stuff done type guy. He can be forceful when he has to be, and I think that's all part of the learning process with him. I thought he had a great spring considering the up and down roller coaster ride that was last year with, coming in and coming out, having performances where there was just not a level of consistency. And Kirk will even tell you like, hey, there were a lot of things that were working against us here, but I myself just wasn't consistent enough in the throwing. So you're going to see a guy from a redshirt freshman season last year who looked good at times, but got banged up behind an offensive line. As long as he's healthy, I echo what Trey Lamb said in terms of he's got the tools that are necessary to play that position at a high level, because he's also going to fit in perfectly with what Trey Lamb wants. And he said this, that the quarterback to him is like a point guard. He's used the John Stockton reference a couple of times as well. And I think that fits in with Kirk perfectly. This coaching staff really went in and started teaching at such a level that I think expanded Kirk's ability a little bit more. And, he did such a good job in spring. Tim Carpenter, who ended up transferring out, didn't necessarily have a great spring at all. I'm not saying that the reason why he ended up moving out is because Kirk was so good, but, Kirk showed the leadership skills that I think Trey Lamb wanted out of him early on. And that's one of the reasons why he's kind of that dude right now. He's going to be a team captain. He gets out in front of him. When he makes a mistake, like Kirk learns from it. And I think that's important. He's not He's not a gunslinger by any means necessary. He's going to make the right throw when is needed, and has the ability at times, not that you're going to ask a lot of this from him, but can make things happen with his legs when he needs to. So I think as long as he has that foundation of coaching underneath him and the talent that they've added around him, he's going to be good. Now, let's not get it twisted. He's still incredibly young, right? Yeah. And to me, the biggest learning tool is seat time. He hasn't had a ton of seat time yet. He just needs to play more. And once he has even more snaps under his belt, I think that he's going to take off and has the potential to be one of the best quarterbacks in this entire conference.
You kind of touched on it here, but what are the strides you're hoping to see from him here in year 2?
I think it's just diagnosing things. And from what I can tell, like a lot of that has happened already. And some of that is just because of the teaching, like that Coach Robbins has brought. And it seemed at times, and maybe I need to ask Kirk this and will at some point, but it felt like that when he started to press last year and he could kind of feel the season as a whole maybe go in a certain direction, that stress and strain that he put on himself and pressing really made him kind of overdiagnose a few things at times, because I just think he was just trying to make things happen, right, which led to a few things. And he's still dealing with the fact that he was a redshirt freshman too, and those guys are still going to make mistakes. So I think it is the processing of information that I'm most excited about with him. I'm not concerned. He's got a great arm. He's got a great touch. He's accurate. Throws a great deep ball. If he can learn to quickly identify, and I think this offense is better built towards that, right? That he doesn't have to overthink it. The sky's the limit for him.
Let's move over to the running game. The Golden Hurricanes have graduated their leading rusher from a year ago, Anthony Watkins. They also saw every other running back who saw a carry in 2024 hit the portal. That means this room will be looking to replace 292 attempts, 1,333 yards, and 6 touchdowns. To supplement those losses, we saw the staff bring in quite a few transfers. We saw Sevion Morrison come in there before spring practice. Jeremie, giving all the change and all the new faces, what should we expect for this running back room heading into 2025?
Man, it's a lot, right? I mean, you just bring that up in the numbers in itself, and it's kind of like until you hear that, you're like, oh, they did. The good thing is that was one of the spots that they were most aggressive in. And I know, to me anyway, Byron Ellison, who ended up leaving and jumping in the portal, there was a thought that he was not only going to be there, that he could play a very significant role, because early on in the first version of the portal, like he had significant offers, and they, I don't want to say convinced him to stay, but he just decided to stay. And then when he jumped into the spring portal, it was a little bit of a, oh, okay, all right. But some of that too is that effort that I told you about within the transfer portal, because they go out and they add Sevion Morrison, who comes back home, played at a high school here in Tulsa Edison, was incredible at Tulsa Edison, right? Broke Spencer Tillman's Edison rushing records, and Spencer Tillman was awesome. Stand out at OU, several years in the NFL, won a Super Bowl with the Niners. If you watch college football on TV, you know Spencer Tillman. He was a guy that was, and I think part of Tulsa's baseline recruiting for transfer portal is you guys can come back home. We understand that if there's an opportunity for you to go play at regional, bigger P4 schools, okay, we understand that. But if you ever get to the point where you can graduate transfer, you ever get to a point where you're unhappy, we had a pretty good thing going here too. And wouldn't it be awesome for you to come back home and do this in front of your family? And Sevion was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And That is a guy that they are incredibly high on right now. Now, he played the last 3 years at Kansas. He's got 507 rushing yards total, almost 6 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns. That's also right with being at Nebraska too. So you've got, Nebraska and Kansas opportunities there. And part of this too is with having such a young team, you want to have those guys that have seat time and snaps. You also want to have a good vet presence mixed in with those young guys. And he provides that, man. He's done nothing but absolutely kill it. Absolutely kill it. He's not one of those speedy guys as well, but he accelerates. He's run every scheme in the world, so there's nothing that's going to throw him off. And he's a vet, great vision. He's got agility. Those are probably the biggest elements to him. And I think he's going to get the lion's share of the carries, especially early. Now, Braylon Presley's another guy that last year was a receiver. I can tell you that Braylon Presley was probably one of the most impressive high school players I've ever seen in my life. Combined with his brother who played at Oklahoma State. I think the stat is, and I'll probably catch what for this, probably getting it incorrect from someone, but he and his brother combined for 115 touchdowns at Bixby High School, which is just an obscene number, right? He went to Oklahoma State and things didn't work out, transferred in, and he had so much expectations placed on him because this is like one of the best high school players that Tulsa is finally getting their hands on. And it just never clicked, man. It never clicked for him at wide receiver. He's a sleight of frame guy anyway. He's a smaller guy. He's 5'6", 170. He had some trouble with his vision. He got that corrected. And I think he just put so much pressure on himself at wide receiver. It just never really seemed like a good fit. Well, now they've decided to move him back to where he was more comfortable, and that's at the running back spot with his group. He's obviously not a guy that is going to be as hardy and capable of taking the everyday and the numbers of carries like a Morrison will. But, man, they're going to use him in a variety of different ways. He's just we got to get him the ball, find ways to get him the ball and get him into space. So they're going to have a nice juxtaposition there between those two. And then they just go out and start adding in, talent that they've got from other places all across the country. They get the running back in from Miami as well. They've really put themselves in a good position. And this position outside of maybe the wide receiver position is the one I think that I'm the most excited about because they've combined it with guys that have experience, but then like incoming freshmen. I mean, they've got this Kelvin Washington kid from Longview, Texas, who rushed for like 3,700 yards, scored 47 touchdowns. There's a lot of talk about him already, about what he could potentially bring to the table. So they feel good about that position itself, even though they've lost a ton of that. They feel like what they've been able to bring in and also an element of what they have back, that they're going to be okay.
In the spring, were you able to get a feel for kind of like what the staff maybe – I guess it's really a two-part question. One, what do you think they're going to do this year? And then maybe what their vision is in terms of running back. Do you think they want to really be a true committee, or do they want to lean more towards like a workhorse type running back?
Yeah, I think it's going to be obviously by committee. Now, I think in the early season, you'll probably see Morrison get, the lion's share. And when I say that could be anywhere right between 55 and 60% of the carries.
Okay.
But I didn't even bring up Dominic Richardson. Like Dominic Richardson comes in, who's an Oklahoma City McGinnis grad. That is a high school in the Oklahoma City side that is just notorious for putting talent everywhere. Played for 3 years at OSU, transferred to Baylor. He comes in. That's another piece to the puzzle that gets added to this. And I think they're just going to view it as we're going to ride with what's working. And I don't think they have in their minds in any specific way possible, like, oh, this guy's going to be, the main dude. They're going to ride the hot hand, but they're definitely going to mix it up with the amount of dudes that they have back there.
It feels like if I'm, based on what you said so far, kind of reading between the lines, Presley's more the change of pace, the kind of get the ball in space kind of guy, third down back.
Yep.
maybe, catching the balls out of the backfield, whereas Morrison's going to be more the guy doing the dirty work between the tackles, goal line carries, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think Richardson will play into that as well, and a few other guys. They're not going to be afraid to play their young guys at all. But that's where I think the majority of that is. And you say catching out of the backfield, like I wouldn't be surprised if they don't end up using someone like Braylon Presley like everywhere. Like, hey, let's put him in the slot, see what he can do. Let's line him back up and do that. The thing with him, if he just gets a little bit of confidence, I love that kid. He's a yes sir, no sir type guy. I just want to see him have success early because I think that will do so much for his confidence. And you've already seen it kind of explode a little bit with him being back more at his natural position at running back.
When we're talking about the offense, you were mentioning Mike Leach and the air raid. And one thing that, like, to me, that even like his direct disciples of Mike Leach, I've never really seen do like he does, is use the running backs in the passing game. It's really just an extension of the running game. It's just short passes.
No doubt.
Do you expect to see that here in Tulsa or no?
Yeah, I think you'll see some of that for sure. Now that doesn't mean that they're turning their back on the running game at all.
Sure.
Because he's made it very clear we've got to establish that, and has shied away from any type of specific like split in terms of run or passing. I think each game is just going to be its own separate organism for feel and flow of how things are going with what they need to do. If that's what they need to do, to use those quick little 3-4 yard outs, bubbles to complement the running game, to as long as they're moving the sticks and they're keeping momentum moving forward, all is game with this offense.
I realize it's early, and some of these guys you haven't seen yet because they weren't there in the spring. But
Yeah.
if you had to guess today, who gets that first running back carry against Abilene Christian, who would that be?
Yeah, I think it'll be Morrison. I think he'll be the first one. He's been the one that's been there the entire way through, and will probably be that very first one that will ultimately become a trivia question at some point in time. I didn't even bring up a couple of the other guys that are here, just because I feel like it's crazy with the amount of depth that they've been able to bring in such a short amount of time. AJ Allen is one that's in the house now. The Miami transfer that I had mentioned briefly a little bit earlier. Those are just like Allen and Richardson didn't even come in until after spring practice.
Yeah.
So, and Allen's a former 4-star recruit. And I can tell you off the top of my head, the amount of 4-star recruits in general that Tulsa's ever had, right? It's very limited in the amount that they have had. So to even, breathe that into existence, is kind of cool for Tulsa to be talking about, like, okay, yeah, things didn't work out at Miami, but we know that you have the talent, right, as a 4-star guy to be able to even sign at Miami. What can we get out of you here in this system?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how things kind of shake out in fall camp for sure. Let's move over to the other position group you said you're really excited about, and that's the wide receivers. We see 4 of the top 5 wideouts hit the portal or graduate. The guys who return in 2025 averaged 35 yards per game a season ago. Again, given all the change, what are the expectations for this group heading into fall camp?
This is the group that by far, Trey Lamb, almost after every media session in spring practice, has said, let me tell you, the best bunch that we have right now is a wide receiver group. Has gone out of his way to praise not only their ability, but their work ethic. They've played better than any other group, I think, throughout the entire spring. And this is the group I think that they're most excited about, with what the potential is there, and that they know can be a difference maker. Even with losing like Cam Benjamin, who is one of the, statistics wise, one of not just the best receiver that they've had over the last couple of years, but You start digging through the record books and the type of career that Cam had here and what he developed into. And I also think Cam Benjamin is a prime example of what Ryan Switzer, who's the wide receivers coach, who was on Kevin Wilson's staff before, what Cam developed into, that they feel like that they can not only develop the young guys that they have here, but guys that haven't necessarily lit the world on fire at their previous spots, but are now coming here with an opportunity, like Mekhi Miller, from Mizzou, who's a senior, played 36 games for the Tigers, had 22 receptions and 311 yards and a touchdown. He started 5 games. Guys like that. His best season was in 23 when he caught 11 passes. And I'm sure if you ask him, he probably had higher expectations for himself at a place like Missouri, but like the talent is there. Zion Booker is a dude that they are absolutely in love with. West Carolina transfer, caught almost 40 passes, like 550 yards, something like that off the top of my head. I think almost 14 yards per catch in 8 games last year in FCS. And you might say, okay, well, they bring in FCS. Well, one of the reasons why they brought him in is because he had a great game against East Tennessee State where Trey Lamb was, when an opportunity came for them to kind of reach in there and pull another receiver out. He was a natural fit for them. He's a slot guy and he's easy to get the ball in the slot because they're going to match that dude up with a linebacker and a safety. Are you kidding me? That is such an unfair matchup with me with a 5'10", 185-pound guy who's not only thick at 5'10". Yeah, you just look at him. Those dudes you just look at and you're like, that's a man. At 5'10", 185, it doesn't sound overly intimidating, but you just look at him, you're like, all right, yeah, that dude can absolutely get it. And I Trey Lamb has said, hey, don't be shocked if Zion isn't their leading receiver because of just the style of play that they have and how often that they're going to be looking at that slot receiver. He could get so many touches and so many opportunities. And then the thing that I like about him, I'm not big on comparison, so I'm not going to use any type of NFL comparison, but he is such a well put together, stocky dude. When he has the ball in his hands, if you just try to lay one on him, he's not going down. You gotta wrap up. And they're so stoked about what he can bring to them. He's just another one of those solid players depth wise that they were able to go and get that has the opportunity to change the course of their career and really put together some pretty eye-opening numbers. And I haven't even got into some of the guys, that they're bringing back from next year, or even one of the other biggest transfers that they got, which was Micah Tease from Texas A&M. 2 seasons there, he got 2 passes for 19 yards, and all of them were as a true freshman in 2023. But I can tell you this, Micah Tease is from right here in Tulsa, Booker T. Washington. That kid can flat out get it. And he, another 4-star prospect, right? He was the 3rd overall player rated by Rivals. Didn't have a catch, just didn't really work out at all. But he is such a hard worker and has thrived in spring under this system with Ryan Switzer, and they love him. And to be able to look and say, you know what? That dude has the ability to take the top off of a defense. Man, they are super pumped about what Micah Tease can bring.
Well, a year ago, Jeremiah Ballard was expected to be a key contributor for this offense, but unfortunately the injury bug struck him. What can you tell us about his recovery, how it's coming along, and maybe what the expectations are for him here in 2025?
Yeah, man. Ballard was kind of, to me, the guy last year when they brought him from UTEP. Was they were so young, they needed that vet, someone that had, been through spring practice, who had been through, just games. And then he comes in, he looks incredible during summer, and then gets in that first game and has the knee injury. And at the moment, you're like, that just sucks for him, because he was so good and such a nice guy. You didn't really realize the type of impact that was going to have at the receiver group in that moment. But I think it was like week 2 or 3, you're like, oh, okay, all right. 6'3", 215 was just productive at UTEP.
Yeah.
And don't really expect anything else other than that, just what he's been. He got 2 passes for 37 yards, had that touchdown, then the knee injury. Unfortunately for him, he was still rehabbing the knee injury through spring. So he didn't get to go through spring. But 7-on-7, a lot of different things. Like he's had a version of full speed for a little while, but again, big veteran presence and just has the size that you want, 6'3", 6'4", 215, that he can, he's just a dimension from a wide receiver spot that like a G5 school doesn't always get.
Sure.
And you like that a lot. And they've got a couple of guys that, kind of fit that mold a little bit. Josh Smith is another guy that is 6'4", 225, which is a redshirt freshman that has looked really good so far. And Zion Steptoe came in from Purdue last year, and Zion at Purdue had bounced back and forth between positions, between cornerback and wide receiver. So last year was like his first real moment of playing wide receiver, is getting playing time, and you can tell it was a learning process for him, right? He really flashed though towards the end of last year, and I can't wait to see what type of development that will continue with Zion. Just having another year under his belt and being able to, craft for what was an inexperienced receiver into hopefully being one of the top returning players, because they're going to have to count on his experience there with this group.
Given, all the new faces plus the veterans, if you had to pick one guy who you think is going to step up and kind of be the lead wide receiver for this offense in 2025, who would that be?
Yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to have to go with Booker. I style of offense that they run, I think he's going to be the guy. It will probably have the best numbers, but outside of that, this might be the best, like, depth wise of wide receivers that they've had since 2016. And that group set NCAA records with what they were doing. So I just think overall it's just a good group, and I wouldn't be surprised if like Mackay and Micah Tees and those guys and Ballard don't have a form of similar numbers at some point. You just look around, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that dude has X amount of catches. That dude has X amount of catches, because the offense is one that's just going to geared to them being stat monsters.
Well, moving over to the tight ends and with the coaching change and the offensive philosophy, what have you been able to learn in terms of how they plan to use tight ends in the offense?
Yeah, like the tight end is one. I feel like tight end is one of those positions, right, that gets talked about like being underutilized.
Yeah,
like
it's always
underutilized, right?
for the most part. Yeah,
It's always there. I'm only going off of what Coach Lamb has said, and he's been asked about it, and he's like, how involved are they going to be? And he's like, a lot. They're going to be involved much more than what they were. They had a really good tight end room last year.
yes,
Really good. McGarry was one of the tight ends, so I think transferred to Houston. I thought had such a young, good group of tight ends. I understand it, but in my position, I was bummed, right, to lose like Luke McGarry, because you could just see the talent. Connor Vaughn was another one that goes to North Texas. Jackson Ford, who transferred to San Diego State, lose Ethan Hall to graduation. I know at the end of the day, it's only 29 total catches for them, but man, you could just see it. You're like, there's a lot that's there. So I was disappointed in that, but to hear, Coach Lamb say that, Landon Lucas and Bodie Foley are going to be implemented in this, I think it's I think it's well past time. Now at East Tennessee State last season, tight ends, I think a little around almost what were similar for Tulsa numbers, right? What, 25 for 312. I don't know without going back and looking, like, specifically, was there something that was causing that? I know one of their best tight ends, I think, got hurt last year at East Tennessee State. So it's very difficult to try to look and compare with where they're at. But, the Foley kid is a kid that played in all 12 games last year for the Hoosiers. Like, he didn't have any stats, but you try to tell me that a kid that played at that program, that got to go experience a college football playoff, that was a great blocker and a team captain for them, that doesn't pay off for a school like Tulsa, like, you're out of your mind, right? What can he do when he has an opportunity, right, to add some stuff to it? Lucas, I think, was a Robert Morris kid, 8 catches for them. No, almost 20, I think, for them. He's kind of a hybrid guy. They'll use him from a receiver standpoint as well. And, they went out and picked up another transfer from Mary Hardin Baylor after spring practice was done. He's another, big guy, 6'4", 240. He was really productive as well with the numbers that he has. So we'll see, but it's been a long time, man. It's been a long time since they've had a tight end that has, from a numbers perspective, really contributed, whether that's from the traditional tight end, H-back, however you want to phrase that. But they were on a good run there for a while. Charles Clay went in the 4th round. Garrett Mills was a freaking stud for them. Nation's top tight end in 2005. They had a really, really good stretch there at tight ends. And I'm as excited as I am to watch the wide receivers and the running backs. I think I'm just as much excited to see what ultimately comes of that position in its own right.
Well, let's move over to this offensive line. They'll have some holes to fill here in 2025. The only starters who return are Ender Aguilar and Brody Duffel. Aguilar made 8 starts last season, while Duffel made 4. They also brought in a lot of transfers, right? So a lot of opportunity here. What are your expectations for this offensive line?
That's probably the biggest question mark on the team, if we're just being honest. And I know Coach Selfo has been working with that group. It was a priority outside of skill players, out of the portal. This is an area that we have to be better at. That a lot of young guys were forced into playing time last year. Brody is one of those guys. Even with him coming back, he's still raw and he's still young. That to me is one of those that, depending on how you view things, do you view them as a success at a certain point in the season, or do you combine it all at the end of the year and say, all right, so how far did we come from this? But I mean, 4 starters are basically coming in from the portal, starting, at left tackle. He's coming from ETSU with Coach Lamb. Got another Middle Tennessee kid that's coming over from center. So if you start talking about having to replace, 4 offensive linemen, that's a significant amount, especially for the expectations that they have. And, even offensive linemen to me are like defensive linemen in the portal. Like, teams are constantly looking for those guys, and Tulsa wasn't any different. So they do like the guys that they were able to get, but that's also been a key part of the recruiting element too, not only with this class that they just signed, but classes in the near future, because they know that they've got to get better at their quality of depth. I think they'll be good. They'll be really good with the group of starters that they have there. But the big question then becomes, the amount of depth that you have. What's the level and quality of depth that you have? And that's only one thing that we'll be able to tell when we get to a certain part of the season. But think about this, Justice. They got 200 yards 3 times last season. I don't, in today's day and age, man, you've got to be able to establish a level of toughness and be able to control the offensive line in so many various aspects of the game, and they just didn't have that element to them. And it's not for a lack of effort, because they tried. They just had a number of things playing against them last year up front.
Given all the transfers, is there one you look at and say, hey, that guy's, probably gonna make the biggest impact here in 2025?
Man, that's a very good looking question. If I had to pick just one of those guys, I'd probably, to me, it's got to be either Simon Wilson from Middle Tennessee. I mean Brody as well. I can't leave him out. But Jaquan Adams at left tackle too. Amongst those guys, I think that's probably combination of those guys that I would probably point at right now. And if I'm just being honest with you, like, because I haven't had much of an opportunity to, sit down and have conversations with Coach Selfo, that's an area that I can't wait to dive into over the next month or so to learn even more about those guys up front that they have. Sure.
Is there a guy that maybe you think, or you saw in the spring kind of step up and be the leader of the offensive line?
I don't want to put that on anyone, really. There wasn't anyone that I just, was like, oh my gosh, like that's the dude that's there. And I tried to shy away from that a little bit, just knowing that there was not only that, for kind of in like in a self-preservation mode, honestly, right? To not put too many expectations on anyone, but just because I know that that group is working so hard, right, to just come together collectively. Sure. And that's one of those that they have to. It's like a symphony up with those guys. They have to almost have ESP with each other, like in a way. And I just don't think that you get that until you get to a certain part of the season.
That's fair. If you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
Man, I'm just going to go with my man, Kurt. I'm going to go with QB1. Style of offense, again, I think he can put up numbers and put up numbers in a hurry. And it will be one of those, because I can already see, sometimes you can look ahead and you can see like what headlines are written. And it's like, oh, well, here was this guy that fought and clawed to get a scholarship out of a local high school, Metro Christian, that is now statistics wise one of the leaders in the American Athletic Conference. I think he has the ability to do that.
All right, well, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. And we started talking about coaching changes earlier. And as you might imagine, there's a new defensive coordinator here for the Golden Hurricanes. Mike Gray joins the staff. He previously served as the Jacksonville Jaguars assistant secondary coach in 2024. Prior to that, he's a defensive analyst for the Atlanta Falcons. And from 2020 to 2023, he served as a linebacker coach at Gardner-Webb. Can you describe the defensive scheme or style that Coach Gray plans to run here at Tulsa?
Yeah, so this is going to be, with Josh Reardon too. Man, they have the biggest task of anyone. And I think that from just watching them in moments in the spring, to see how far that they came, I think so much of this to me is just about reestablishing a culture, right? A culture of, no, you are good enough. That there are a lot of good dudes on that team last year, and even members of the staff that I consider to be friends. And I don't think that they would shy away from this. The lack of confidence that was pouring through the defensive side of the ball last year was just one of those ones that they did not have the ability to overcome a mistake, right? You make a mistake, let's identify it and let's move on. That group last year hung their head because they just didn't have confidence and they didn't have the level of success to go along with it. So you got to start there, to me. And it's the building them back up with positive reinforcement, and then adding to them good players as well. That to me was the biggest challenge for this defensive group that's coming in. And everything that I've heard so far, everything that I've seen, relying on their expertise, they've come a very, very long way in that front. Now, what does that translate to on the field? I don't know as of next year. They're going to be very adaptive to a variety. The American is such a unique conference, right? With the type of offenses that you see, like,
Absolutely.
we can sit here and we can talk about base, like what they're running like all day, but man, they see so many variety of different things.
I mean, you're playing the triple option one week, and the next week you're playing
gosh, man,
playing it all over the place offense.
Yeah, like no doubt. Like you go from like literally 1 week, like you said, to playing what they run in North Texas. Like get out of here. Like the juxtaposition between that is just nuts to me. The challenge there starts with just the firm and belief in what they're doing. And so far, like I said, so good on the defensive front. And they went out and everyone looks for edge guys, right? They have made some really good strides in the players that they were bringing in because they lost a lot of good quality players off of the defense that you could feel were growing and getting better through the course of the year, even though like numbers didn't necessarily look at it. But they, if they can get some production out of their defensive line and out of their linebacker core early, I think that could set the stage for the back end where they have a lot of good, young, talented guys that are still back that had a lot of playing time. This is a very young team because they had to be last year. They got so banged up that you looked out there and one was like freshman after freshman after freshman, and guys that the coaching staff were like, we didn't even want to play these guys on defense, but we had to. We had to even be able to survive the season last year. That's kind of the mode that they're in. And now the next staff gets to kind of benefit from a lot of those young guys that got to play.
Well, let's move over to those position groups, and we'll start with that defensive line. Via the portal or graduation, the Golden Hurricanes will see 127 pressures and 12 sacks exit this room.
Yep.
But you see a lot of transfers brought in. How did the defensive line look in the spring, and was anyone standing out for you?
Yeah, I thought that the guys that they brought in, and they're guys, by the way, that are going to have to play and have to play well early. Byron Turner from Florida State, he's got to be the dude, right? He's got to be the dude. Nakai Johnson from Pitt, he's got to be that guy in the middle. He just has to be. Depth again will be a concern for those guys, but if you can get an ounce of what got them to places like Pitt and Florida State out of them at this level playing in the American, I think you feel pretty good with where they are. Tim Hardiman's another guy that comes in from Arkansas State. They did some really good work, but last year the pass rush was non-existent at times. And the guys that did consistently transferred out, and having to rebuild that all the way from the floor all the way up has been a challenge for them. But I felt like that the pieces that they've added have been really decent so far.
You talk about having to create that pressure. Like, is Turner the guy, or is there someone else you think alongside him that can kind of help?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be. You hate to say have to be, but you circle guys, right? Like,
yep.
Hey man, like this is it. And I'm not putting all the expectations, nor is the staff, on one guy, but man, if there's one guy that you're hyped about that you just look at and you're like, oh yeah, that's what a P4 player looks like, right? It's Turner. Or like, I remember last year, like Miles Jackson, who played at Indiana, that came in. Like, I remember the first day, like laying eyes on him and like, Oh, so that's what a power conference player like looks like physically, right? That
Sure.
was there, and he had so much pressure on him. He had a really good year, but not quite from a pass rushing perspective. I think that everyone expected out of him. So, um, yeah, man, he's got to be good. He only came up with like one sack, I think, and 3.5 tackles for a loss in 3 seasons at Florida State. But man, he's got an opportunity to make a name for himself here and kind of be the man with his defense if he really wants to. It's on the defensive line because I think one of their top transfers actually comes in at the linebacker spot. But man, he's got a really good chance.
If this defensive line, and forgive me if the answer is the same thing, but if this defensive line performs above expectations in 2025, it's because of who?
I think it's because of the three players that I just mentioned, that are bringing in. They're going to have to have the immediate impact for sure. That means you're going to have a significant presence of being able to create pressure, not just sacks, but pressure.
Yep.
There was a point last year where you look up and I mean, almost every defensive metric, and I'm not speaking out of turn here, it just is what it is. Like every defensive metric, they were one of the worst teams in the country. So they've got a lot of area to improve, looking at it from one positive perspective on that. Yeah, they've, if they could even get to a baseline of say, I don't know, in that 60 or 70 range, I just think about how much better overall that they can be as a team to get the defense moving in one right direction.
Well, let's move over to the linebackers, and they lose their leading tackler, Gavin Potter, to graduation, as well as Zach Marcaselli.
Yep.
Comparatively speaking, they didn't bring in as many transfers like we saw on the defensive line. They did bring in a few transfers. But what did you see out of this linebacker group in the spring, and kind of who stood out for you?
So the guy that you asked about, is there a guy that's going to have to kind of wear the crown? And to me, that is a guy that comes over that did a little bit of everything at ETSU, and that's Ray Coney. Man, 97 tackles, like 5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 6 broken up passes. I mean, what didn't that guy do last year for them? And to now give him an opportunity to play at a higher level inside of the American, going to be a lot of fun. And unfortunately, there's going to be so much pressure that's put on him of trying to fix a defense that ranked near the bottom in almost every statistical category that there is. He's going to know the scheme, right? Because Reardon had been at ETSU. He knows what's expected of him. He's going to have to be a leader from the get-go, and they're going to have to find a way to maximize the talent from a X's and O's that you can kind of cover up your deficiencies while you're still in somewhat of a transition and development phase. And he is a guy that has all of the past experience with that staff to be able to make that happen.
Now, is there someone that you saw in the spring that you're going to join him in that starting lineup, or is that still kind of TBD?
Yeah, I think some of that is TBD, but I will tell you that there's some hype around a few kids, and there's one that is getting some run that has the opportunity to make a name for himself, and he's a freshman. And he's got a lot of development to go, but the term that is used, and I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but A bowling ball of butcher knives. Have you ever heard that term before?
I haven't.
Okay.
But it kind of reminds me like of a bull in a china shop or something.
That's exactly right. I'm trying to remember who I heard that from. Maybe Keith Burns, which is probably a bad example to use if I'm trying to bring up something that was there. Hudson Ball is a name that everyone needs to keep an eye on. Okay. He is a defensive end. He's listed as a defensive end, but I think they're going to find a way to use him in a variety of different ways as well. He has and I should have brought him up when I was mentioning the defensive ends too. But again, don't be surprised if you don't see kind of a mixture of this. 6'2", 240. Like, he played at one of the legacy schools that we have here in town, Jinx. Went to Shiloh Christian in Arkansas last year and has done nothing but come in and that bowling ball of butcher knives mentality and has kind of set the world on fire. Like, they need a go-getter. They need a you-know-what kicker. And he fits that definition of just that. Those, you just need some of those guys, right? Like, we just watched the Thunder. The Thunder have those guys like an Alex Caruso. Like, he fits that definition. He's that guy. That is Hudson Ball. And the ways that they speak about this freshman in glowing terms, just, you're like, okay, yeah, you can mention him, and every coach mentions like freshmen. Like, yeah, okay. But to hear them talk about him like in the loving terms that they do, like, I wouldn't be surprised that if you don't hear something from him. That is just one that I will say, like, keep an eye out for that young man, because he's going to be really, really good.
Well, let's move over to the secondary. The Golden Hurricanes graduated safety Malachi Jones, assault safety Dane Hodge, and cornerback Tyree Carlisle hit the portal. Despite these losses, the defensive secondary may be the strongest positional room on the defensive side of the ball, as they return several guys from a season ago. Given all those returners and those guys, like you said last year, that were forced into playing time and gained some valuable experience, what are your expectations for this defensive backfield?
They have the ability, I think, to really kind of set the stage for that defense. The guys that they brought in transfer portal wise, like JD Drew, who played at Utah State, another Booker T. Washington kid. Again, you notice a pattern here. Played high school football here, goes off somewhere else, and then comes back home. Man, JD Drew has played incredibly well through the spring. They absolutely love his leadership and ability that he's brought in. Champ Lewis is back. Champ was still trying to recover from a knee injury that he suffered last year. Sucks because he was penciled in to be one of the dudes at safety last year, transferring from TCU, and just unfortunately right before the season started had an injury. So still kind of trying to nurse through that, but he'll be back at some point. Anthony Rumpf is a young man that is a transfer in from Charlotte. I know that came in during the spring semester, played at Purdue, Western Michigan as well. So 30 career games, right? So has playing time, 25 tackles, played in 11 games last year, had 8 tackles on the season, had an interception last year. I know that they're really high on him and his ability. Kawan Parker played at Booker T here and has been at Tulsa now after transferring from Arkansas in 2023. I got to see him a couple of months ago, just putting in work after the season, and his dedication to like getting better, like it just sticks out. So played in 6 games in 23, had 5 starts after 2 seasons at Arkansas, but was also one of the top overall recruits in Oklahoma in 2020, where he played corner and safety in high school, and been playing football for a long time. They're really excited about the continued growth for what will be his last season here. Elijah Green, last year as a freshman, had those moments, those like, oh my gosh, this is a freshman, but then also had the, oh my gosh, this is a freshman, like type of moments in a game. And he would drive at times some of the defensive coaches crazy, but man, he was so good. Like you couldn't keep him off of the field. He's just so raw, so raw. So again, trying to just develop some of that now as a sophomore, but this is a kid at a cornerback that has all the size that you want. It's like between 6'2" and 6'3", hovers right around 200 pounds. Just really good. Nunu Campbell played high school football here at Holland Hall. Has, seemingly, I just look now, he's a redshirt junior. I feel like that he's been here for 13 years already. Continued development out of him as well. They just got they've got a lot of depth that's back there that has a lot of experience, and that should make you feel really good if you're a Tulsa fan about the amount of experience that they have back there. Maybe not necessarily in a Tulsa uniform, but just experience in what it's like in the college game at that position, which, as you know, is incredibly difficult.
Absolutely. Who in this secondary do you feel is kind of ready to take their game to another level here in 2025?
I think it's going to be a combination. Like, I think JD Drew's just so steady, but I think it's Parker and then Elijah Green. I like Elijah Green a lot, and I want to see, again, still young, but I think he can develop really quickly. But to me, a lot of this, I want to see Keywan Parker have the type of senior season that we all in this area know that he can have after watching him here in high school.
All right. Well, just like the offensive side, I'm going to ask you here on the defensive side. If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
Whew, man. Let me go back a little bit to the defensive line and another guy that I should have mentioned, Ty Newhouse. I think with Ty's experience, who they almost lost, by the way, he jumped in the portal and they came back. I think Ty is poised to finally have the ability of playing next to a couple of guys. Like, I can't wait to see him play next to the Pitt transfer in there in that moment, because I think that Ty has the ability to elevate his game to another level that we haven't seen before. And I know he was a coveted player that they talked to and were able to convince to come back. So I'll go ahead and pick Ty Newhouse, who's been here before, as someone that I think can really play at an incredible level. And also Chris Thompson too, who's a linebacker. So yeah, like, there's so many new faces. I feel like I'm going to leave those out. I keep forgetting about the guys that have been here before, but like Chris Thompson as a linebacker as well, I think has the opportunity to really kind of set the stage for himself.
Well, we've talked offense, we've talked defense. Now let's move over to the special temes. How are those units looking, and are there any concerns?
Man, that's a good looking question. Because I'll be honest with you, I do not know a lot at this point in terms of just where they're at from a special teams perspective on this. I think they feel comfortable in the kicker that they have that they've brought in. I do not know as of right now a whole lot about him outside of just looking at numbers. Outside of from what we've seen with some of the guys in the past that are coming back. But that's one of those positions I think that is going to be, I don't want to necessarily call it fluid, but one of those ones that I hope to learn more about as we move through the course here of the summer months heading into fall camp.
Sure. Well, now that spring practice is over, which position group or groups do you think is the most concerning heading into fall camp?
Offensive line, again, will continue to be work in progress. And I think that, to me, is probably the biggest question that they have outside of maybe trying to put a few things together in terms of depth with defensive line and also a linebacker. But those to me clearly are the ones that kind of stick out the most.
In today's age of NIL, revenue sharing, and the transfer portal, how have you seen it change Tulsa's recruiting philosophy? Again, it's a short
Oh
time
my
period,
gosh.
but
Yeah. Phew, it's night and day. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, even to where they were, 2 years ago into last year, and to see, listen, Trey Lamb wouldn't be here unless they had the commitment that they've had in terms of a um, NIL, not only program, but what they have too. With how private schools kind of mix up and do a few things. But to making sure that they had a firm number, not only within the conference that they have to meet, but the
right,
fact that they have enough of a commitment from the university in money and the revenue sharing that they're going to be competitive with the other teams in the conference. Now, because they're private, they don't necessarily have to tell you, right? How
right.
much that's going to be, but
But we know they have to meet the 10 million,
they
right?
have to meet the 10 million within 3 years.
Yeah.
But I'm only going off of what Justin Moore, the AD, said, and I just talked to Justin today, and he's like, we have told our coaches that you are going to be competitive and in the same realm as other programs in this conference. So that to me tells me that, on the higher end of the programs that probably have a little bit more money, the Memphises of the
I mean,
world.
Memphis has more money than everybody
Yeah.
with G5.
Yeah, right. And like they can get no one to take them, which is crazy. Like they've been waving their hand forever. Like, hey, please come get us. They're going to be, and from what I was told, they're going to be in the upper half as far as what they can do from a competitive standpoint with their contracts. And yesterday was July 1st, so all that stuff's going now.
Yeah.
I think they said that they got all of their payments cleared by 8 a.m. yesterday, right, with everyone. So they're already rocking and rolling, and it's so weird because in the amount of times or in the years that I've been doing this, this is the largest in terms of staff that they've ever had. I mean, and it's just stepping up at the times, right? But it's so weird to think about. They have a GM. He's got dudes under him. They've got, more staff members than I think that they've ever had before. But that's what has to happen in today's version of college athletics, especially at the football standpoint. And Tulsa has not come in and has been cheap in any aspect at all. They've done everything that they can to remain competitive. And that was one of the promises that was made, not only by Justin, but also by Trey to the fans, that, look, we're going to be competitive in this version of college football. And I tip my hat to them because we've all heard that before. It's another thing to actually live it. And so far they've done that and have really offered up some competitive numbers from what I understand for some guys. It's been really, really impressive.
In their short time on campus, how do you feel the staff at Tulsa's done navigating the portal?
Oh, knocked it out of the park, man. I mean, they came in, they had a very limited amount of time, right, to put together a high school class. The one, they had to honor the previous commitments. That was a decision that they made. Then to try to fill out what they were going to do with the late signing day, which is I'm just the high school class now. Filling that out, plug the holes of guys that had decommitted because of the previous staff. But then, to really have a down year to recruit to, first year of this is what we're going to do in terms of money. This is what we can do for you. To go out and get the numbers done for like the contracts that they were going to sign for some of these guys, man, like in a short amount of time, you have to give them an A. You just have to, because they did not leave any stone unturned, right, to try to get this roster put together. And it's only going to get better once they have a foundation of success underneath them.
What do you think the main strength of this 2025 team will be?
Whew. I think offensively, I think that'll be their strength. They're going to turn some heads offensively. I feel like wide receiver group will be really good. That's the most depth. Is it cheesy or corny for me to say just kick-ass mentality? Like they just
Well, I mean, there's so much change, right?
Yeah, there is so much change, but I just wish that people could even have an idea of what a breath of fresh air that the staff has brought, which is overall feeling of energy and excitement. And that's trickled down through so many people that I've talked to and the players as well. They're hungry and they want to win. And even if they win, let's say 5 games, they're still going to approach this from a standpoint of like, no, we know we're better. We know we feel like that we're better. And honestly, they could win with that schedule. This is not going to happen. I say that. I shouldn't put absolutes on anything, especially in life. Let's just say they have a year and when they win 3 or 4 games. Record looks similar to what it has been. They're better. They're just better. From almost every single element, program-wise, through administrators, all the way down through even the last player listed on the roster. They're better than what they were.
What does success look like for the Golden Hurricanes this season?
And
maybe it's just changing the culture, right?
Yeah, I think that culture-wise, like it's already like that to me is already a success, right? And that will morph and change through the course of the season, obviously. Sure. So one, they already got a big win there, like massive. I think a lot of people see and feel the momentum that's happening. They want them to be competitive, that. And I keep bringing up how difficult the schedule is. A lot of the fans know. Like the expectation is, like expectation is bowl game. That's out there. But even from just a fan perspective, if we can just be competitive and even be in the games with this schedule, that sets the stage for what some feel has the ability to be an pretty incredible run in year 2 for this group. Now, there's so many moving parts that happen with that, right? With roster movement and everything else. Yeah. I don't know what to expect in college sports anymore, but yeah, man, I think I think culture, 1, that's already happened. 2 is bowl game, and 3 is just being competitive even in the losses.
Well, Jeremy, we've covered a lot of ground today, but is there anything else you want to share or think that we should know about this 2025 Tulsa Golden Hurricanes football team?
I saw this the other day. I'm trying to think of who had it, but I would put them in a list of teams. This is not me saying they're going to win the American. What did I tweeted the number the other day that they are for like betting number to win the American. It's like plus 17,000 or something like that. Like, sure, right. Like it's a big number. Yeah. It's a big number. Not saying they're going to win the conference by any means. If there is a group of teams that has the ability to have statistically a bigger turnaround, I think I would put Tulsa at least in my top 10 teams in the country in terms of what could happen coming off of a very, very down year last year. I'll say that. And enough. I might be a complete homer. Like I like guilty as charged on that, but I just have belief in what they're doing.
Well, Jeremy, I just want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you for having me.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.